So, what are websites? I know that seems like kind of a really random question, but before we're going to do all this work on our website, buy the domain, do the hosting, write content, build it out, and all these, other options, we want to know really what it is that we're working on. At the end of the day, it's kind of odd to spend all this time on something where we don't really know intrinsically how it works. So I'm going to get maybe the most technical again in the entire series. And frankly, if you don't really care about how websites work, feel free to just skip. But I just want to make it kind of more transparent about what is really happening when you're working on all these things. So take Market My Market, for example. This is a domain name, and it's pretty much a vanity for an IP address. So when people are, doing a search, websites used to just be a string of IP addresses, much just like your home. Your home is like 1.192.168.0.1. I don't have that memorized. Don't hold me to it. But that's pretty much what Market My Market is. And what your domain is, what you have existing right now. It's just a vanity domain that's on top of an IP address. That's easier for people to find it directly. And then, of course, if they're doing searches, a vanity URL is obviously going to be more appealing than a string of numbers and dots. So what is it really is basically taking a bunch of files and hosting it on a server. We're going to be doing it on a server. GoDaddy is kind of a go-to. Other people use Bluehost, HostGator, and there's literally dozens, if not hundreds, of other ones. We're going to be using WP Engine because their dedication and the great experience that we've had with them. But at the end of the day, it's basically taking that domain name and then attaching it, or having a hosting account with all the files that you're hosting that are your website kind of pointing towards that domain. So if you type in the domain name, therefore it is rendering all the files that are hosted on their server. So essentially, if you go to, there's a couple handy things if you're a little interested on the back end things, but I'm on Google Chrome, view page source, and it's basically, built out all this code. And what happens is when you type this in, your browser is interpreting that code and then rendering it as you see here. And that being said, if you go to inspect, that's the reason, because at the end of the day, it's your browser that's rendering a bunch of code that a server is hosting. That's why you can go to communicate with your browser directly and pretty much manipulate what it is based off of what your browser is displaying. And so that's why you can go to inspect, you can click on this image. I can click here and then hit delete, and it'll start deleting because I'm now communicating directly with my browser instead of the browser communicating with the server. So I just want to make that a little bit transparent. I haven't explained that in a while. Hopefully it was somewhat clear, a little bit of clarity on how all these things work. I just think it's important when anyone's working on something, they should have just a little bit of an understanding of what goes on behind the scenes.